155 of the Rotary Club of Fresno in our 106 years of existence. So very excited to be here today, and we have an action-packed full agenda for all of you. I'm going to begin with, first and foremost, we have all of you muted, so if somebody needs to be unmuted, just please unmute yourself in the bottom left-hand corner there. Should be pretty simplistic, or let Anna and I know, and we can take care of that for you. But I want to begin with something that I want to continue from what Todd started, and I thought it was a fantastic idea, kind of fun to lighten the things up when it comes to what we're doing on this whole Zoom thing. Is that I want to have some Zoom bombs, I think we're calling them, or guest speakers that come in to just say hi and what's going on. And with us, you're going to see him on your screen as DY30, but Mr. Dale Yourong from ABC 30. And there's a very specific reason why I brought Dale on today, because I think Dale, out of any of the media here locally, so my claim to fame, everybody knows because of my ag hat, but I've done a lot else in my life. One of the things I'm most proud of is I was on the championship basketball team, state championship basketball team back at Washington Union back in the day. And we were pretty good. Most people that were around at the time knew who we were. And at that time, Mr. Dale Yourong was actually the sportscaster over at ABC 30, was actually covering our team. And it's funny how he's transitioned now over to the anchor side, still doing some reporting. And now we get to work one-on-one many times, during a month on agricultural issues. So with that, Dale, you're on, aren't you?
I am. How you doing, Ryan?
Doing fantastic. Well, we have you on here with all the Rotary Club members, and excited to have you on there. Dale, what's new in your world? Obviously, COVID's changed a whole lot on the media side of things.
It really has. I mean, if those of you who are watching Action News every night, you've noticed over the last couple of months, I've been anchoring from home for the last couple of months, and as a result, I serve as my own studio director because I change graphics. I don't know if you can see me. Am I popping up there or not, or am I black?
No, you're still just a black screen at this point.
I don't know why that is. I don't know, but I had the Rotary logo in my TV just to show you guys that I can change my graphics and photos in the background, so that's kind of cool. It's not showing up there. I apologize, but
hit the stop video button at the bottom.
At the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hit the video. I don't know what's going on there. Let's try this one there.
Dale, your at-home studio doesn't sound like it's very effective.
It works at 5, 6, and 6:30, but not now. I don't know why, but I appreciate President Jacobson having me on for the first Zoom bomb with no video. But, I've covered lots of Rotary meetings over the years because you guys always have such interesting speakers. And I know you guys always enjoy lunch. It's just kind of cool that the president in his first momentous meeting has shipped prime rib lunches to every one of you. That was a very nice thing to do. Oh, and if you didn't get your prime rib lunch, the president says he'll ship you bags of almonds at a future.
Exactly.
So that's how that will work. But congratulations to all of you and Rotarians. I appreciate all that you do because you do some admirable work with your missions. And I don't know what's up, why I'm not popping up here. I hit start video and I don't know what's going on.
That's okay. I mean, you got the Secretary of Ag laughing at you right now. I mean, that's always worth something. So.
Yeah, well, there you go. You always have great special guests there, and that's a great way to kick it off because obviously, ag impacted greatly during our pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dale, no, thank you so much. I wish we could see you, but for those of you who haven't seen Dale on the nightly news here recently during the pandemic, he has this incredibly bright, vibrant red wall that's behind him that really sticks out. So he's definitely kind of the more notable just because of that. That by himself, his home studio has been very, very cool to see during this time. So Dale, thank you so much for joining us. Always appreciate everything you do. And particularly from my selfish perspective, I love all the ag stories you do, helping to tell our stories. So
you bet. Time to get to the serious stuff. You bet, Mr. President.
Thank you much, Dale. Well, with that, then I want to move over to, so I want to do something a little bit different over the course. I mean, I don't know when we're going to get back together. I know I hear from all of you that you're all hoping we get back together sooner than later. And trust me, I hear you. We're going to do everything we can to make that happen. But as we continue to do some of these, obviously, we're going to continue doing these Zoom meetings. I want to take the opportunity over the course of the next 3 months to introduce every single week one of our board members. The opportunity to so you get to know your board a little bit better, a little bit more background as far as where they come from, why they're here, and all that kind of good stuff. It's not going to be overly coarse, but I think it's just something that's important because so many of us now, I just want us to feel connected during this very disconnected time. And so, but I'm doing something a little slightly different today. I'm not going to start with a board member. I want to actually start with, and I don't know if we're going to say what the technical term is, but we'll say the first lady of Rotary now, second to Anna. So I don't know if it's the second lady, whatever. We'll figure out what the terminology is. But I wanted to introduce my wife. I thought it would be fun for you guys to get to know her a little bit better. I know some of you have got to meet her from meetings that she's attended in the past. She was very much looking forward to being a very active participant this upcoming year. Obviously, things have shifted a little bit as far as her Zoom side of things, but nevertheless, you're going to see her on a weekly basis. And so with that, Ashley, I think you're on right now. Are you unmuted?
I am now.
Oh, she's unmuted. So this is my wife, Ashley. This year we've been together 20 years. And so Ashley, if you want to do, so she is we met at Fresno State. In fact, hold on here 1 second. I actually did want to have some fun here a little bit. So let me see here if I'm going to do this right. And let me see.
Wow.
So we met at Fresno State 20 years ago. We've been together 20 years this August, so just shy of 20 years we've been celebrating together. Been married 15 of that. And Ashley was over in the business school. I was over in the ag school. But one thing we shared in common was that I was a President's Scholar. I was the last class of the Rodman Scholars over at Fresno State. Ashley was the very first class of Smith Camp Scholars. So we're separated by a year, but because of having the distinction of being President's Medalist, we had the great opportunity to meet and came together. And so Ashley is now, and I'll let her tell this part of the story, but she is now a CPA with Moss Adams here in town. So Ashley, take it from there.
Sure. Thanks, Ryan. So after I graduated from Fresno State, I started my career at one of the big four accounting firms, Deloitte & Touche here in Fresno. And I was there for 12 and a half years until they decided to close the assurance department. And at that time, I joined Moss Adams, which is also a CPA firm. It's ranked about number 11 in the country. So, continuing to serve clients primarily in the food and agribusiness space. And in addition to my professional life, Ryan and I, you probably know, have 3 boys. And there's a picture there. So our oldest will be turning 9 this September, and Ranger, our middle son, turned 5 this last January. And then Trooper, the baby there, who is, there, he's a bit bigger now. They all just got haircuts last week. So that was a big change. They were looking quite a bit like sheepdogs. Our 5-year-old decided to trim his own bangs. So that was quite interesting. I think he got it down about to the root. And there's our sweet little family. So as you might guess, the quarantine situation has created a bit more stress in my life, where, when I step foot outside the office, the boys are demanding my attention. It's fun on the one hand that they're this age because, they give lots of hugs, and but it can also be extremely exhausting because there's very little downtime time. Ryan was kind enough to let me have some alone time this morning for about a half hour while he took care of breakfast and everything. So we're adjusting to our new reality. I work from home, and then, so it's quite a bit different. Anything else you wanted me to share, Ryan?
No, you alluded to it, the amazing husband that you have. I think that's kind of important to cover on this whole thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and looking forward to getting to know all of you better over the next year as well.
Well, thank you. Yes, I just wanted all of you the opportunity to meet Ashley. You'll see her around a bunch this upcoming year. And she is, like I said, very much appreciative of the opportunity to be a part of Rotary. And like I said, it's something that to our lives has become a very important part. And besides the meetings, we've enjoyed so much the opportunity to get to know so many of you on a different level there. So with that, thank you so much, Ashley. And I think at this point now, I am ready to jump to our speaker for the day. And Miss Brugman, I know Miss Shirley is out there somewhere. This is something that we love to bring up, the fact that we do have 2 Nebraskans, I think, on the call today. I'm pretty sure I saw Shirley here a little bit earlier. Our speaker today is a Nebraskan, or a Nebraskan at heart, or started in Nebraska, now a Californian at heart, because she plays such an important role here in California agriculture. But Secretary Karen Ross grew up as a 4-H kid in western Nebraska. She and her husband Barry still currently have a farm back in Nebraska, which I think is so awesome, and full of grains and other things that they grow on there. She has the secretary has a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln as a graduate of the Nebraska Ag Leadership Program. Secretary Ross was appointed Secretary of the California Department of Food and Agriculture on January 9th, 2019 by Governor Gavin Newsom. In reappointing the Secretary Ross, Governor Newsom cited her unmatched leadership experience in agricultural issues nationally, internationally, and here in California, in including areas of environmental stewardship, climate change adaptation, and trade. Secretary Ross was initially appointed by Governor Edmund G. Brown Jr. in 2011. Before joining CDFA, Secretary Ross was Chief of Staff for U.S. Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack, a position she accepted in 2009. And prior to that appointment, which I need to mention, that I'm the 3rd generation to work with Secretary Ross, because my grandfather, mom, and dad all worked with her in different capacities. But prior to that, she served as the president of the California Association of Wine Grape Growers from 1996 to 2009, and as vice president of the Agricultural Council of California from 1989 to 1996. Secretary Ross, thank you so much for joining us today, and I am going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm just sorry I can't be in Fresno today. I'm really, talk about getting stir crazy. I'm very stir crazy being in the Sacramento bubble. But thank you for inviting me. And of course, the first thing I have to note is that our ag statistics report came out last month, and Fresno has once again seized #1 away from those pesky southern neighbors in Tulare and Kern County. So good job, Fresno. Our most recent statistics report shows that California agriculture is hanging in there right at around $50 billion annually, over 400 different crops. But Fresno, one county alone, $7.9 billion farm gate value in 2019, which is pretty remarkable. California obviously has agriculture in a way that few people really know about or appreciate, but I think COVID-19 has really refocused our public's attention on the food that we grow, where it comes from, and how it's being grown in a way that I have not seen in my recent history. We at the Department of Food and Agriculture were designed over 100 years ago to promote and to protect agriculture, and our very core functions are about keeping exotic invasive pests out of the state wherever we can. But when they do arrive, we've got very vigorous trapping programs. And this is where I get to acknowledge one of our most important local partners, which is your ag commissioner and my good friend, Melissa Cregan. She's been in that position a little over a year now, but she's got several decades of experience in an ag commissioner system. With our ag commissioners, we're constantly out trapping for pests and taking care of pest problems wherever they might arrive. We say that work continues, just like agriculture is an essential function during COVID. So are the services that we provide to make sure that our food supply system is open and able to do business, to keep it moving across county lines, across state lines. So we have a very big function with plant and health disease issues and pest issues, but we also have an equally important animal health program. Dr. Annette Jones is our state veterinarian. To their credit, they have spent the last 2 years on a very intensive virulent Newcastle's disease outbreak. It was in Southern California and backyard flocks. But it is a disease that spreads very rapidly and kills the poultry sector. It was critical that we partnered with USDA and our ag commissioners to run that program for 2 years. It's a lot of people on the ground going door to door, checking the health of all of the flocks that are there, having to depopulate when it's necessary, when the birds are sick. 2 years and over 900 weekly reports. And we finally have been able to declare that eradicated. And I'm really pleased that we've embedded some resources in Southern California to work with backyard flock owners and exotic bird breeders to be able to do their own biosecurity measures. In many ways, I bring up these two programs because the way we operate these programs on a daily basis is similar to how we're trying to fight COVID. That is to understand where it is, to keep the infestation as small as possible by rapidly responding, to treat people and to stop the spread. And that's what my plant and animal health staff do on a daily basis. We also have weights and measures, making sure that whether it's at the gas pump or the package that you buy at the grocery store or the lumber that you're getting at the lumber yard, that what you're paying for is true to the weight and the packaging and the label that it's prescribed to be. So we have people out in all of those retail settings every day, checking and verifying those weights. It's one way that we keep business all on the same footing. We don't want people who are trying to circumvent the system for all the rest of the businesses that are abiding by it. And so that's an important function. I also like to note that our Weights and Measures Division is this little tiny bit of Department of Food and Agriculture that is also accelerating the utilization of electric vehicles. We do all the standard measurement of that. We've got the first one in the country and it's taken off around the rest of the country. So that little Weights and Measures Division is also part of our future economy with electric vehicles. Our marketing division oversees fairs, and yes, fairs have really been impacted by COVID-19. We have what used to be the dairy program, but now that has become part of USDA's federal milk marketing order. We still have a little piece of that with the quota program. And we did our very first large-scale administrative hearing by Zoom with several hundred people for a 2-day hearing with an administrative law judge at the end of June. So we're getting our experiences of all of us being able to run Zoom meetings in a very effective way and in a very legal process that required. We also have our inspection services. That has become a fast-growing program. We oversee the organic program. We oversee farmers markets. We oversee our fertilizer research education program. And that is the arm of CDFA that's boots on the ground for implementation of the Food Safety Modernization Act. Making sure that we keep our food safe in these times is probably more important than ever. So that's a little bit about what we do at the Department of Food and Agriculture, and I thought I'd spend just a couple minutes talking about our role in COVID-19. Unlike any other emergency process that I've ever been engaged in, when we have an emergency like a wildfire or an earthquake, as two examples, we will activate our Office of Emergency Services and do a unified command center process where we all are there to do the planning, to do rapid response and make sure that every Californian is well taken care of, whether it's in an evacuation process or whatever it is. Those are always like a region being impacted as an emergency and the response that goes into it. COVID is different because it has affected every part of the state, every part of the country, and every part of the globe. So we stood up, we're in charge of Essential Service Function 11, which is for food and agriculture. It's really about making sure the food supply is open, that it's safe, and that we're meeting the needs of our citizens. But we were competing for some of the same protective equipment for our workers as the first responders were in healthcare. So one of our most important functions has been able to secure PPE where it's not been available, and to get that distributed to farm workers and those in the ag sector. I'm happy to report that partnering with the ag commissioners, we have now distributed 12.9 million surgical masks for standard work. And just last week, we were able to distribute 1 million N95 respirators, which are the same as gold because that is what is needed for our healthcare workers. But there are very specific ag jobs that require that, including the application of pesticides. So that's been one function that we've done. The other one is that right as COVID impacted agriculture and the loss of food service, the loss of travel, the loss of tourism, the loss of business meetings, colleges, and gathering places, that was about 50% of where food dollars are spent. And that was a very sudden disruption in the supply chain. The food was still there, but it had been dedicated to food service, and all of a sudden there was no place for that food to go. Some of those initial stories we heard about food waste was because food dedicated to food service is packaged differently. It cannot immediately pivot to a retail outlet. So there were some losses there, but we have a longstanding program with the California Association of Food Banks. We've had it in place for over 12 years. It's a partnership with farmers who annually are donating product because of markets that are just not there, or the harvest is really bountiful that particular year. Because of that partnership, we were able to minimize the amount of food that did go to waste. There were fields of lettuce, as an example, that did have to be plowed under, because lettuce is such a short-term crop. If you can't capture it right away to get it packaged and shipped, it doesn't have any nutritional value. We were able to minimize that. We were able to minimize milk that couldn't get into the processing plant. All of those markets have stabilized considerably. But I think when we look at what we have before us with this kind of longstanding disruption, people being in the retail store, having seen empty shelves was kind of a wake-up moment of where does our food come from? And how few people know that California agriculture is responsible for 1/3 of all the vegetables that are consumed in this country on a daily basis, and 2/3 of the tree fruit and the table grapes and the tree nuts that are consumed in this country. And yes, we're still the #1 dairy state. A lot of our dairy product comes out of California as cheese and yogurt and butter, but I'm very happy to report that people are baking like crazy and the butter market's pretty good right now. So Ryan, that's just like a really big overview, because I would really prefer it if there's some questions that we could get into a Q&A, if that sounds okay.
That sounds terrific. I appreciate it, Secretary. One of the questions I did have here was, what is the, from Jerry Lyles, what is the current status of exports to China specifically?
Yeah. So the export situation has declined considerably. The market is reopened. There's still some tariff issues that we're fighting against. I haven't seen numbers for the last quarter. It is starting to come back, and I am pleased to note that for citrus, we were able to get citrus into the China market, but it is still down considerably from what it would have been before some of the tariff issues had started. We have learned in such a short period of time how critical China and all of Southeast Asia markets are for California goods. They love California quality and flavors of California. Wine is one that's really having a difficult time getting back into some of these markets now. It's just a couple of examples. Almond people are still doing a good job, but it's been a painful 2020 so far.
Yeah, absolutely. From Paula, it looks like you said labor declines, question mark, due to transportation. So I'm assuming just over the overall labor market, what's going on in ag right now?
So with all of the disruption and so many people being laid off, which has driven a lot of the need for food banks, we came into COVID-19 historically not having enough farm labor being available, which has also driven an increase in the use of the temporary ag worker program, which is known as H-2A. We did see some potential layoffs, especially in the areas where people have most of their productivity going to food service. So there were some layoffs, but May we started to see a significant rebound. We are short of people in the farm labor workforce, but people so far have been able to get by, and they've been supplementing it with H-2A workers. Obviously, there's been a tremendous amount of stress on the farmers of securing labor, of making sure they had the protective equipment to keep labor safe, bringing in additional buses and vans to move labor so that we can have them socially distanced. But it's been amazing to see how innovative and how adaptive agriculture has been to be able to accommodate that. And I don't want to overlook the critical importance of some of the same population for who is staffing up our fruit packing houses, who is showing up at food processing now as we're getting tomato season really going for that, and of course in our meat packing plants, where the conditions there have been addressed, but we did have early infestations in some of the meat packing. Nothing like the numbers that we saw out of the Midwest, which is where most of our animal protein comes from, but we've had some of those similar situations.
That's terrific, because that was one of the questions we had from Edward, was it mentioned fighting poultry diseases. What is the Department of Ag doing to keep open slaughterhouses, packing houses open?
Yes.
And you did address that.
Yes. And of course, that's one that the president did declare, because of the backup that happens all the way back to the farm, becomes an animal welfare issue. He declared, if necessary, we would keep meat packing. And I'm happy to report on a national basis, those plants are very close to being back to 100% in processing capacity, but that still has caused a backup on the farm of that animal population that wasn't able to get into processing.
No, absolutely. And this next question, I'm going to prelude it with the fact that a lot of folks don't realize that we have a state food and ag board that is made up of a combination of farmers, ranchers, agricultural advocates, and food advocates that come together and work on this. The chair of that board is actually a Fresno County farmer, Don Cameron. So that's a pretty cool thing for Fresno having that.
Yes.
And that's why I'm kind of preluding it, since Secretary, a question from Dr. Bushman, the thoughts on the availability of water in the future and what changes this cause.
Yes. So you cannot have a secure food supply if you don't have a stable source of water. Obviously, there have been changes in biological opinions that have impacted some of that. There have been changes in state law with the implementation of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And that's really been the focus for this administration. Is it's a law that's passed, all the plans have been submitted. How do we partner with folks in the Valley on being able to do more recharge? The numbers of increases in using recycled water, in addition to improvements in water use efficiency, are remarkable, with how much more productive we are using 15% less water than we did in 1980. That's a tribute to the investment that's being made. But we have a very serious challenge before us with water. I'm really pleased of the work that's happening in the Valley on the blueprint. That's a lot of water districts and environmental justice advocates that have really come together out. How do we make sure we continue to have drinking water? How do we make sure that we continue to have viable agriculture? And I do want to put a plug in for a proposal that's come out of the Fresno area, because people are working together on what is called the DRIVE Initiative, which is a regional economic planning model of everybody in the stakeholder community coming together. One of the top priorities for that is the Fresno Merced Future of Food Innovation Corridor, which is a partnership with UC Merced, CSU Fresno, and UC Ag and Natural Resources, to really look at our centers of excellence around food, and understanding water is a key part of that. How do we accelerate the technology that will keep us sustainable for generations to come, and do it at the scale that becomes another export for us? And really focusing on water and the long-term viability of serving water to agriculture and to our local communities for a thriving economy, I think is one of the most exciting proposals I've ever seen. In January, the governor proposed a $33 million startup investment for that innovation corridor. Obviously, with COVID, we lost many of those new initiatives, but the budget that just passed has a $2 million kind of seed money to keep that really important organizational work and community engagement work going on. So I just have to say kudos to everyone in the Fresno region for doing that kind of thinking about our future together, building a future on food and agriculture and technology, and really great leadership from the Central California Community Foundation. So just want to throw out some really positive remarks there for that work.
Absolutely. And that's one thing that I think it's important noting for this group, is the fact that we are, when we talk water, so often people automatically think agricultural, but these rural community situations, I mean, they have been scary, quite honestly, the last 5 years or so, but there is a lot being done. I know this governor, one of his first actions in the first 3 or 4 months was to help try to start beginning to solve this issue.
Yeah. And agriculture was at that table. They worked on this for 2 years to get safe, reliable drinking water to all of our communities. And we recognize that many rural parts of California still haven't recovered from the last recession, So we need to stay very focused and engaged in partnering with rural California, so we don't leave anyone behind in the future economic recovery. Yeah.
And a follow-up from Edward, you talked about the port impacts. What about with crops with shorter shelf lives? Are they finding markets domestically? And maybe that's probably a good segue. I mean, two of our biggest trading partners is Mexico and Canada.
Yeah.
So what kind of impacts have we seen there as well?
Yeah, it was pretty scary with Mexico right as this happened for both dairy as well as some of our fresh product. Canada is historically a #1 destination for all of our leafy greens and for wine. I have to say that since I do like wine and I used to represent wine, I guess I still do. So Canada and Mexico, it's very important that we have the relationships that we have with our neighbors to the north and to the south, because they are very good customers. Canada is a high value trading partner. Mexico, just with the population and the shared culture that we have with Mexico and California, continues to grow. And the imports from California, dairy has a very, very strong market. It's an important one for us. It's also an important one for tree nuts. It's starting to go that way, but I would say dairy is probably the most important export from California to Mexico, but Mexico, for all of the manufactured products that come out of this country, is a very key partner for us. Thanks for those questions.
No, absolutely. And with that said, Dale, we have you. We see you now.
Oh, we see Dale. I see Dale.
Technical glitches have been, it was a matter of unplugging. I don't know. I think my account in Zoom goes through the station, so that's why it blocked me. But yeah, see that I got the Rotary Club.
You do, I see that.
And it was interesting to hear Ryan at the beginning talk about how back in the day I used to cover Washington Union basketball.
Yeah.
And Ryan was on those wonderful teams back then in high school. I think that was his way of saying I'm an old guy, but that's okay.
Absolutely. Hey, Dale, you're our ag reporter here locally. You got any questions for the secretary?
You know, I did have one because I'm doing a story actually today on the food banks, and the secretary talked about how a lot of farmers basically overnight lost their markets especially through food service.
Mm-hmm.
Wondering, did you see many farmers around the state able to move some of this product to the food bank so it didn't all go to waste?
Yeah, in fact, I think that will be a kind of a long-standing thing after this. Because of our partnership, we did see a lot of food immediately being moved into the food banks, which is important. So you had a farmer or farmers writ large, not every farmer was impacted the same way, lost 50% of their outlets because food service closed down that suddenly. But at the same time, we saw the demand for food banks grow by 73%. So being able to do that matchmaking, our partnership with the California Association of Food Banks has been especially an important one, because it's kind of like, I call them the air traffic controller of food banks, because they serve all of their members, there's over 42 members, there's a total of 50 plus food banks, but they know how much capacity they have for storage, what their distribution patterns are, and they can meter the truckloads of produce to them. Because of our partnership, we've been able to put fresh produce into food boxes for over a decade. And I will say it became a model because USDA, with its relief program, has dedicated $3 billion that Congress set aside to help commodities by being able to purchase those commodities for food boxes and then get them into distribution to food banks. So we've got 2 major programs going on right now. I will have to say the Fresno area food bank does a fabulous job. I haven't had the pleasure of working with the new executive director. I worked with Andy for a number of years. And it's not just what people were donating to the state program, but what people in their own backyard donate. You know, farmers don't want food to go to waste. They grow it for people to eat. And there's nothing better than, especially in the summertime, to be able to share fresh produce to go with all those staples that go into food banks.
Great, and it's worth mentioning, we have the new co-CEO, Kim Dildine, who's actually on the call right now. So
great.
Kim, congrats, she started a new position there, so.
Okay. Great.
You're so kind, yeah.
Yeah, and another thing important to note too, Secretary, is that we have Paula, who is the VP over at Fresno State, and we also have a very, I think we were one of the first probably in the country to start the student cupboard over there. That's
you were.
And so Paula just mentioned that they're very thankful for all the donations
Yeah.
that they've received over there as well,
Yeah.
because they have a great partnership with our Central Cal Food Bank, as
Yeah.
well as with local farmers and everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Fred, your food bank does a terrific job. So good relationships.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Well,
We
I
appreciate it. And
appreciate
really,
you.
the state moved fast to make that available. Again, the partnership with California Association of Food Banks to get it to us, and then also to the rest of the country, really. So whatever can be used here in California, we were able to share among our network across the country. And so farmers, manufacturers, food banks, and the state associations did move fast with your support. So we're super grateful.
That's good. Great.
Well, great. Well, Secretary, thank you so much. I mean, cannot thank you enough for taking the time to come join us today. I guess if we can give her a virtual hand, I guess.
I do want to say one thing. I love what our farm bureaus do. Every county has a farm bureau. And Brian Jacobson is just one of those spark plugs. Like, he knows everything about ag, and he does a little television show on the side. But it's so important that we have organizations like that at the local level. And Farm Bureau does what few other ag organizations do, because they're statewide and they're local. And when you have a leader like Ryan, who is passionate about the service that he does through Rotary, I just want to say thank you all. I'm sure there's many people here who have been mentors of Ryan, but he comes from a great family, and it's been a pleasure to work with the Jacobson family for all my years in California agriculture.
Exactly.
So congratulations,
Yeah, like I said,
President.
You've had 3 generations of us, which is pretty amazing.
That's right.
Well, thank you,
Bye,
Secretary.
everyone. Thank you.
Great. Have a great one. And with that, we're already prepping for next week. Mr. Darren Rose, you're going to give us an idea of what we're expecting next week.
Yes, Ryan, thank you very much. Next week, we're going to be hearing about community choice energy from local energy executive Al Galvez and Barry Vesser from the Clean Power Exchange.
Fantastic. Well, stay tuned, everybody. Show up next week. We appreciate that. Something I got to give a couple shout outs here. I mean, I see Richard. I mean, he's had that incredible background on his, I assume that's your car, Richard, but that's an incredible background. I'm thinking here in the next few weeks, we're going to have a formal competition for best background. I think it's only pertinent. I mean, I see James, the great school one there. I see Blair's BBB one. I mean, I think we got to have a formal competition here in a couple weeks that you're gonna hear about this. We're gonna come up with something. Who can come up with the best virtual background there? Yeah, Richard's is pretty impressive. That's gonna be hard to beat, but I think everybody can have some fun with that. As far as a way to end the meeting, sometimes I'm one of those. I kind of like tradition, and it's kind of one of the things I really respect. I mean, I think of him as a great mentor. He's been a great friend over the last decade, because his time in the chamber and my time at Farm Bureau coincided here. But Mr. Al Smith, I want to end the meeting with you, because I forget what we called him. We called him Al's Words of Wisdom, Al's Letters of Wisdom when you were president. But I think that's the right way we need to end this meeting today.
Thank you, Ryan. You suggest I resurrect my little Karnak thing. And so this is what I used when we were closing last year, or the year before. One would have thought you would not do that, because we don't need to resurrect this. I offended a lot of folks with that thing, but what the heck, you're kind of a rebellious guy, and maybe that's a tip off of what we can expect. But to follow up on your request, 3 envelopes in my hand. I will pick out one at random. I will open it up, withdraw the words of wisdom, and it goes like this. A driver was stuck in a traffic jam on the highway outside of Washington, D.C. Nothing was moving. Suddenly, a man knocks on the window. The driver rolls down the window and says, "What's going on?" Terrorists have kidnapped the entire U.S. Congress, and they're asking for $100 million ransom. Otherwise, they're going to douse them all in gasoline and set them on fire. We are going from car to car collecting donations. The driver asks, "How much is everyone giving on an average?" The man replied, "Well, how about roughly a gallon?" And that's my joke for the day.
Okay. I see a few claps out there. With that said, thank you all for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed our speaker. I hope you enjoyed our fun time together. As I said, I hope we see face to face here just hopefully soon. But until then, I'll see you next week on Zoom virtually. With that, meeting adjourned.